What if events went differently in the MCU? What if another hero had been introduced at the very beginning of Phase 1 in the MCU? What if Ben 10 was in the MCU? Welcome back, my fellow watchers of the multiverse, to another brand new fanfiction movie, and in today's fanfiction we're going over the highly anticipated what if scenario where Ben 10 enters into the beginning of the MCU timeline, and there's going to be a ton of new changes. Welcome back, my fellow watchers of the multiverse. I can't thank you guys enough for all of the support that I'm seeing here on the channel. I'm seeing a lot of brand new channel engagement. We have a lot of new subscribers, a lot of new channel members. If you guys haven't become a member, I would highly recommend it, as you guys can get a bunch of behind the scenes content, a bunch of exclusive videos, and it really just goes a long way to support the YouTube channel. We just did a live stream earlier tonight, depending on when you're seeing this video, and I'm seeing a ton of brand new requests, and I know that Ben 10 is a franchise that a lot of people wanted to see in the MCU and see how the Omnitrix would play a significant role within the MCU. It'd be interesting if anybody else could perhaps get their hands on it. But that being said, my fellow watchers of the multiverse, let's dive into the brand new What If episode. The desert heat blazed down on the rusted roof of the rust bucket, the familiar hum of the Omnitrix buzzing softly as Ben Tennyson lay on the hood of the RV, watching the clear blue sky. Life had been quiet since he defeated Vilgax and saved the universe. Maybe too quiet. At 16 years old, Ben was still adjusting to life as a teenager, trying to balance being the most powerful hero in the galaxy with being just a normal kid. Grandpa Max had told him time and time again that he needed to learn patience, that not every day had to be a battle for survival. But Ben Tennyson wasn't built for boredom. And today was different. The Omnitrix began beeping erratically, its green glow flickering as symbols Ben didn't recognize appeared on its interface. He frowned, sitting up. Gwen? He called toward the RV. But before she could answer, the entire world shifted. A flash of green energy exploded around him. The rust bucket, Grandpa Max, Gwen, everything vanished. Ben hit the ground hard. He groaned, pushing himself up. His surroundings were completely different. Instead of the familiar desert, he was in the middle of a bustling city, New York City. And not just any New York. This one felt off. The skyline was different. The air buzzed with energy. There were billboards for Stark Industries, news reports about a man in an iron suit. Ben's stomach dropped. Where the heck am I? Before he could process it, his Omnitrix let out a high-pitched warning sound. He looked down. The device was sparking, glitching. Then the ground rumbled beneath him. A roar split through the air, shaking the buildings around him. Ben spun around just in time to see a massive green figure smash through a bus, sending it flying. Holy crap, Ben muttered. He barely had time to react before the Hulk came barreling toward him. Ben's instincts kicked in. He slammed the Omnitrix down, feeling the familiar flash of green energy. When the light faded, he was 4 arms. The Hulk didn't stop. Neither did Ben. The two titans collided in the middle of the street. The impact sent a shockwave through the city, glass windows shattering from the force. 4 arms caught Hulk's fists, pushing against the sheer rage-fueled strength of the beast. But the Hulk was stronger than anything Ben had ever faced. Ben's feet skidded back against the pavement. Geez, man, I thought you were supposed to be a good guy. The Hulk responded with a thunderous punch, sending Ben flying into a building. Ben groaned, shaking his head. All right, that hurt. He tapped the Omnitrix again. Another green flash, and now he was Diamond Head. Hulk charged. Ben planted his feet and formed massive crystalline spikes, blocking the attack. The two clashed in a flurry of raw power and destruction, neither backing down. Then, the battle was interrupted. A streak of red and gold shot through the air. A repulsor blast struck the ground between them. And then came the voice. Okay, I don't know who the rock guy is, but Big Green, you need to calm down. Ben looked up, and for the first time he saw Iron Man. Before Ben could react, drones surrounded him, locking onto him and the Hulk. Then came a new voice. Stand down, kid. Ben turned to see agents in black suits flooding the street. A man in an eye patch stepped forward, Nick Fury. You've got a lot of people interested in you, Fury said, looking straight at Ben, and we need to talk. Ben looked at the soldiers, looked at the Hulk, who was still growling but now retreating, looked at the futuristic tech hovering around him. Yeah, this wasn't his world, and things were about to get a lot more complicated. Ben sat in a S.H.I.E.L.D. facility, arms crossed as Iron Man, Nick Fury, and Black Widow stood across from him. So, Tony Stark said, tapping his fingers against the table, let me get this straight. You're a kid from some alternate timeline with a super watch that lets you turn into aliens. Ben sighed. Pretty much. And you expect me to believe that? Ben smirked. I mean, I did just suplex the Hulk through a building, so... Tony pointed. Okay, yeah, fair point. Fury stepped forward. We ran scans on that device of yours. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. And that means you're either a threat or an asset. So tell me, Tennyson, which one are you? Ben leaned back in his chair. That depends. Are you guys gonna help me find my family? Fury and Stark exchanged a look. We'll do what we can, Fury finally said. But in the meantime, you might want to get comfortable, because you're not going anywhere. Days passed. Ben worked with Stark, trying to analyze the Omnitrix, hoping to find a way home. Then, he got the call. Fury walked in, his face unreadable. Kid, you should sit down. Ben's stomach twisted. Why? Fury hesitated. We found someone. Your grandfather. Ben's heart leapt. Where is he? Fury exhaled slowly. He was in the Battle of New York. The words hit like a sledgehammer. Ben froze. Fury continued. He didn't make it. Everything around Ben faded. The room, the voices, the world. No. Not Grandpa Max. He was the one who always survived, who always had a plan. Ben's hands clenched into fists. The Omnitrix flashed red. His entire body shook, and for the first time since arriving in this world, he felt truly alone. The air in the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier was stale and heavy, filled with the low hum of machinery and the distant chatter of agents moving between mission briefings. But in the isolated training bay, there was only silence. Ben Tennyson stood in the center of the room, his fists clenched, his breathing ragged. His eyes were locked onto the punching bag in front of him, though he barely saw it. All he saw was the last conversation he had with Grandpa Max. You can't save everyone, Ben, but that doesn't mean you stop trying. His knuckles burned, but he didn't stop. Another punch. Another. The Omnitrix flickered green with every movement, reacting to his unstable emotions. A voice interrupted him. You know, hitting that thing harder won't bring him back. Ben stopped, sweat dripping down his face. He turned, eyes narrowed, and saw Tony Stark leaning casually against the doorway, arms crossed. Ben scoffed. Wow, thanks for the life lesson, Stark. You should put that on a Hallmark card. Tony walked closer. Look, kid, I get it. You lost someone important, but beating yourself up over it? That's not gonna help. Ben's fist tightened. He wanted to argue, wanted to scream, but deep down he knew Stark was right. He took a shaky breath, turning away. "I don't know what to do," Ben admitted. "I'm stuck here. My family's gone. My world's gone, and now..." He exhaled sharply. "I wasn't even there when he died." Tony's smirk faded slightly. "I know what that feels like." Ben looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. Tony sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Let me tell you something, Tennyson. I spent years thinking I could have saved my parents if I had just been smarter, if I had just done something differently. And you know what? That feeling never goes away. But you either let it drown you," he stepped forward, resting a hand on Ben's shoulder, "or you make damn sure you honor them by being better." Ben swallowed hard, nodding slowly. Before he could respond, alarms blared throughout the helicarrier. "Unauthorized breach detected, level 5 security alert." Then, over the intercom, Nick Fury's voice cut through the chaos. "It's Loki. He's here." Ben sprinted through the helicarrier corridors, his heart pounding. If he was going to prove himself, now was the time. By the time he reached the secure vault, S.H.I.E.L.D. agents were already down. Loki stood at the center of the chaos, the Tesseract's blue glow illuminating his twisted grin. "Well," Loki mused, tilting his head, as he noticed Ben. "You're new." Ben didn't hesitate. He slammed the Omnitrix down, a burst of green light filling the room. XLR-8 emerged. "Let's see how fast you talk when you're eating pavement." Ben shot forward, the world slowing to a crawl around him. In less than a second, he was inches from Loki, claws swiping toward his staff. But Loki vanished in a flicker of green energy. Ben skidded to a halt, confused. Then, pain exploded in his ribs. Loki appeared behind him, driving his staff into Ben's side with unnatural speed. Ben crashed into a metal console, groaning. Loki chuckled. "Oh, how amusing. You think speed alone will save you?" Ben gritted his teeth. Not speed. He hit the Omnitrix again. Green light erupted. Loki's grin faltered as the hulking form of Humongosaur emerged. Ben cracked his knuckles. "How about raw power?" Loki's smirk returned. "Much better." Then he raised his staff. Before Ben could react, a blast of energy sent him flying through the walls of the helicarrier. As Ben struggled to get up, he saw Loki walking toward him, eyes glowing with power. "You don't belong here," Loki said, his voice dripping with amusement. A child playing with toys beyond his understanding. "Look around, boy. Do you truly believe these people will ever accept you?" Ben's breath caught in his throat, because deep down a part of him feared Loki was right. Then, thunder rumbled. A massive hammer slammed into the ground between them, sending Loki skidding backward. Ben looked up, dazed, as a towering figure landed beside him. "Stand down, trickster," Thor commanded, eyes locked on Loki. Loki laughed. "Ah, brother. Always ruining my fun." Ben groaned, clutching his ribs. "Yeah, I'm having a blast over here." Thor looked down at him. "You fought well, warrior, but you are wounded. Rest. I shall handle this." Ben scowled. "Like hell you will." He forced himself to stand, ignoring the pain. "This fight isn't over," Thor smiled. "Then let us finish it together." Ben grinned, despite himself. "Yeah," he said. "Let's do this." The sky opened up. The Chitauri Invasion began. Ben stood alongside Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Black Widow, and Hawkeye. He had never fought an army before, but when he saw those aliens descending on the city, he felt something ignite inside him. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for his world, his family. Ben slammed the Omnitrix down. Humongosaur ripped through the Chitauri, tearing apart their hovercrafts. XLR-8 zoomed through the battlefield, webbing soldiers up for Cap. Diamond Head created massive crystal barriers to shield civilians. And then, way big, Ben grew to massive proportions, his towering form smashing Chitauri motherships from the sky. Tony Stark flew beside his colossal head. Alright, that's a neat trick. Ben smirked. You should see my other ones. The battle ended. New York was saved. But something was wrong. Ben stood in the wreckage, his hands shaking. He tapped the Omnitrix, trying to activate it. Nothing happened. He tried again. Still, nothing. Panic set in. Tony Stark noticed. What's wrong, kid? Ben's voice was hollow. The Omnitrix. It's not working. For the first time since coming to this world, Ben felt powerless. Days passed. Grandpa Max's funeral came and went. Ben stood at the grave, hands trembling. I'm sorry, he whispered. I couldn't save you. I couldn't even be there. A hand rested on his shoulder. It was Tony Stark. You're not alone, kid, Tony said. And if you need help, I've got plenty of tech lying around. Ben looked up. For the first time, he saw a path forward. He might not have the Omnitrix, but he still had a mission. The Pacific waves crashed violently against the cliffside. Each impact sending white foam sprang into the air. The Malibu mansion, or what was left of it, stood in ruin. Half of it swallowed by the ocean, the other half a burned-out skeleton of metal and glass. Smoke still curled from the remains, the charred scent mixing with salt in the night air. Ben Tennyson sat on the hood of an abandoned car, his arms resting on his knees, watching the fire die down. His knuckles ached from punching the wall earlier, but he barely felt it. He barely felt anything. The Omnitrix sat uselessly on his wrist, its once vibrant green glow now reduced to nothing but a dead husk. No matter how many times he tried, it wouldn't turn back on. And that terrified him, because if the Omnitrix was gone, what was he? You're sulking again. Ben didn't turn at the voice. He didn't have to. Tony Stark strolled up next to him, brushing dust off his jacket before leaning against the car. You do that a lot now. Thought you were the act first, think later type, but lately, he whistled. You've been giving Steve a run for his money in the brooding department. Ben scoffed. Maybe because I just watched my entire life get wiped out, and now I'm stuck in a world that isn't mine. He lifted his arm, shaking the Omnitrix. Oh, and let's not forget, I lost the one thing that made me who I am. Tony hummed, considering his words before answering. Well, if that's true, then you were never much to begin with. Ben's head snapped toward him, his eyes narrowing. What? You heard me, Tony said casually, crossing his arms. If all you are is some kid with a magic watch, then maybe I was wrong about you. Ben clenched his fists. That's not... Isn't it? Tony turned, facing him fully. You keep acting like you lost everything, but from where I'm standing, you still got 2 hands, 2 legs, a brain that's shockingly not as dumb as I expected, and a heart that makes you throw yourself into danger without a second thought. He gestured toward the wreckage of his home. You think this thing on my chest made me Iron Man? It didn't, and neither did your watch. Ben looked down, his jaw tightening. Tony sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, kid, you want to sit here and feel sorry for yourself? Fine. But I know something about losing everything, and I also know what comes next. You get back up. Ben didn't answer right away, but after a long moment, he finally met Tony's gaze. What do I do? He asked, voice quieter now. Tony smirked. You build yourself back up, he said, piece by piece. And just like that, Ben Tennyson's new journey began. Ben had never struggled like this before. Every morning he trained with Happy Hogan, learning close quarters combat without the strength of his aliens. At first, he got his ass handed to him. Every time. "Come on, kid," Happy barked, dodging another one of Ben's swings with ease. "You think a symbiote or some crazy alien is gonna take it easy on you just because you don't have your fancy watch?" Ben gritted his teeth, barely dodging Happy's next move. "Kinda used to just punching my problems away," he admitted. "Yeah, that's why you suck right now," Happy countered, before sweeping Ben's legs out from under him. Ben groaned as he hit the mat. Again. He lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling. "I hate this." "You'll hate dying more," Happy said, offering a hand. "Now get up." When he wasn't training physically, he was in the workshop with Tony, learning engineering. "All right, Tennyson," Tony said, tossing him a wrench. "You want to be a hero without powers. Then you need to get creative." Ben looked at the table before him, covered in prototype gauntlets, energy-based weapons, and repulsor tech. "Make something," Tony said simply. Ben hesitated, looking down at the mess of tools and parts. Then he got to work. At first, it was clumsy. His designs were rough. He had never built something without Azimuth's genius behind it. But as time passed, as Tony pushed him to improve, something changed. He got better, stronger, and before long he wasn't just Ben 10 with a broken watch. He was something new. Ben had planned to stay out of it. Tony was dealing with some terrorist lunatic called the Mandarin, and Ben didn't think it was his problem. But then, the Malibu mansion exploded. Ben barely had time to react before the entire cliffside collapsed into the ocean. He grabbed onto Tony's suit as they plummeted into the water, barely escaping death. When he woke up, he was in the middle of Tennessee, stranded in the freezing cold with a broken down Mark 42 armor and Tony Stark. Ben groaned. "You seriously thought this was a good place to land?" Tony grunted, shoving a piece of debris off himself. "It wasn't my idea, genius. The suit kinda had a mind of its own." Ben exhaled, rubbing his temples. "Okay, so let me get this straight. We've got no suits, no weapons, and a terrorist with magic rings wants to kill us." Tony smirked. "Yep, welcome to my life." Ben wasn't useless. He helped Tony repair the Mark 42 armor. He hacked AIM's systems, uncovering the truth about the Mandarin. He built his own makeshift gauntlets using Stark's old tech. Tony watched him work, impressed. "You know, kid, you might be a genius." Ben smirked. "I know I'm a genius." Tony chuckled. "Cocky? I like it." The battle against Aldrich Killian and the extremist soldiers was pure chaos. Tony had his suits. Rhodey had his armor. Ben had nothing but his fists and his mind, and yet he still fought. He used Stark Tech to take down extremist soldiers. He went head to head with Killian, outmaneuvering him. He saved Pepper from falling into the flames, and in the end, Ben didn't need the Omnitrix to be a hero. The battle ended. Killian was dead. The Mandarin was exposed. Tony looked at Ben, impressed. "You did good, kid." Ben smiled. "Yeah, I guess I did." Then, his Omnitrix beeped. Ben's breath hitched. Slowly, he lifted his wrist. The symbol glowed green again. For the first time in months, it was back. Tony saw his expression. "What? What's wrong?" Ben swallowed hard. "It's working again." Tony smirked. "Well, that's either really good or really bad." Ben couldn't stop staring at it. Why now? Why after everything? Then, the Omnitrix flashed red. A voice came through. "User compromised." Ben's heart stopped. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. The cold wind bit through the streets of Washington, D.C. The early morning sun casting long shadows across the National Mall. It had been nearly a year since the Battle of New York, and while the world was beginning to move forward, Ben Tennyson wasn't. He had spent the last year working with Tony Stark, learning how to fight without his powers, while also trying to understand why the Omnitrix had shut down, and why it had suddenly returned. But no matter how much Stark analyzed it, there were no answers. The Watch had gone dormant for months, only to reboot itself with an ominous warning, a warning that had haunted Ben ever since. User compromised. What did that mean? Was something wrong with him? Was something inside the Omnitrix broken? Why did it feel different now? Ben had avoided calling Azimuth, partly because he still hadn't found a way to contact the first thinker of the Galvans, and partly because he was afraid of what he'd learn if he did. So instead, he did what he always did. He kept moving forward. Now he found himself in Washington, working alongside Steve Rogers and Natasha Romanoff. S.H.I.E.L.D. had assigned him to help with a major security detail for Nick Fury, though Ben suspected Fury had pulled him into this just to keep an eye on him. He wasn't an official Avenger, not yet, but after everything he had done, he wasn't just a kid in a green jacket anymore. As he stood near the reflecting pool, watching the sun rise over the Capitol, he felt it again. The Omnitrix buzzed faintly against his wrist, like it was trying to warn him of something. Something was coming, and soon he would wish he had listened. The gunfire started before Ben even had time to react. One moment, Fury was sitting in his black SUV, muttering about how he didn't trust S.H.I.E.L.D., and the next, the entire street erupted in chaos. Bullets ripped through the vehicles surrounding them, sending metal and glass flying. Civilians screamed as masked attackers poured in from all sides, their weapons trained directly on Fury's car. The sheer precision of the ambush was terrifying. Ben, standing a block away, immediately launched into action. He sprinted forward, slamming his hand onto the Omnitrix. A bright green flash enveloped him, and in an instant, he was XLR-8, his body surging forward at supersonic speed. Everything slowed to a crawl. In the time it took for one bullet to leave a gun, Ben was already moving, dodging between the incoming fire. He slid across the pavement, flipping an attacker into the air with a well-placed kick before darting behind a car, where he saw Fury struggling to reroute control of his SUV. "Fury, you good?" Ben called out, his voice sharp as he knocked another mercenary unconscious with a lightning-fast strike. Fury gritted his teeth. "Does it look like I'm good, kid? Get in here." Ben didn't hesitate. He zipped toward the vehicle, dodging bullets with every step, then leapt onto the roof of the car, using his momentum to flip into the passenger seat. Just as he landed, the entire car shook violently, and then he saw him. Standing atop the wreckage of an overturned truck, a single masked figure loomed over the battlefield. His metal arm gleamed in the sunlight, his piercing blue eyes locked onto Fury's car with terrifying precision. Ben's blood ran cold. There was something wrong about him, something off. "Who the hell is that?" Ben asked, eyes narrowing. Fury didn't even turn as he slammed the car into gear. "That kid is the Winter Soldier." Ben barely had time to register the name before the assassin moved. With unnatural speed, the Winter Soldier leapt off the truck, landing directly in front of them. And then, he opened fire. Fury gunned the engine, the SUV tearing down the street as the Winter Soldier fired round after round, each bullet slamming into the bulletproof glass. Ben pressed his back against the seat, gripping the dashboard. "Tell me this thing's got weapons." Fury smirked. "Oh, it's got weapons." He pressed a button, and a mounted turret slid out of the car's hood, unloading a barrage of bullets toward the incoming soldiers. Ben didn't wait around. He tapped the Omnitrix again, shifting into Diamond Head, just as the Winter Soldier leapt onto the roof of the SUV. The car lurched violently as Bucky drove his metal fist through the ceiling, trying to grab Fury. Ben reacted instantly. He twisted his entire body, morphing into unbreakable crystal, then slammed his fist into the roof, meeting the soldier's attack head-on. The impact sent shockwaves through the vehicle. For the first time, Bucky hesitated. His piercing blue eyes met Ben's, recognition flashing through them. "Who the hell?" Bucky muttered. Ben grinned. "You know, usually when guys grab me like this, they at least buy me dinner first." Before Bucky could react, Ben drove a crystalline knee into his stomach, launching him off the car. He watched as the soldier flipped midair, landing gracefully on his feet. His metal fingers twitched slightly, almost like he was remembering something, and then he disappeared into the smoke. The attack had left S.H.I.E.L.D. in shambles. Fury was critically injured. The organization was compromised. Ben sat in a dimly lit safe house, his hands clenched into fists. Across from him, Steve Rogers stared at a grainy image of the Winter Soldier. "Who is he?" Ben asked. Steve's face was grim. He hesitated, then spoke the words that changed everything. "His name was Bucky Barnes. He was my best friend." Ben froze. This wasn't just some assassin. This wasn't just another enemy. This was a man who had been turned into a weapon. And suddenly, the warning from the Omnitrix echoed in Ben's mind again. User compromised. A chill ran through him, because now for the first time since coming to this world, Ben had a terrifying thought. What if the Omnitrix wasn't warning him about an outside threat? What if it was warning him about itself? The room was silent. Ben sat at a table in a dimly lit safe house, fingers tapping against the Omnitrix as he stared at the grainy black and white image of the Winter Soldier displayed on the screen in front of him. Steve Rogers had just told him who the man behind the mask really was. Bucky Barnes. Steve's best friend, a soldier who had died decades ago, only to return as a ghost with a metal arm and a kill count in the hundreds. Ben didn't know what unsettled him more. The idea that Hydra had been controlling Bucky for years, or the feeling he couldn't shake that the Omnitrix was trying to tell him something. The words echoed in his mind again. User compromised. He had ignored them before, brushed them off. But now he was starting to wonder if he was making a mistake. His grip on the Omnitrix tightened. He had spent his whole life trusting this thing, relying on it. If something was wrong with it, what did that mean for him? A voice cut through the quiet. "You okay, kid?" Ben looked up to see Sam Wilson standing in the doorway, arms crossed. The guy had been watching him closely ever since Fury's near assassination. He didn't trust Ben, not fully, and honestly, Ben didn't blame him. "I'm fine," Ben muttered. Sam arched an eyebrow. "Yeah? 'Cause you look like you're about to break that thing in half." Ben exhaled, forcing himself to relax. "It's nothing. Just trying to figure out my next move." Sam studied him for a moment before stepping inside. "Well, if it makes you feel any better, you're not the only one with questions." He gestured towards Steve, who stood by the window, staring at the screen. Cap's been at this all night, trying to wrap his head around what happened. Steve finally spoke. "Hydra's still out there, and now they have Bucky." His voice was steady, but Ben could hear the pain underneath. "We have to stop them before they disappear again." Ben nodded, his mind made up. "Then let's go stop them." Steve turned to look at him. "This isn't just some alien fight, Ben. This is war. If you come with us, there's no turning back." Ben's lips pressed into a thin line. "I don't turn back." Steve held his gaze for a long moment before nodding, then suit up. The drive to the Triskelion was filled with tension. Ben sat in the backseat of a stolen car, his fingers drumming against his leg, as he listened to Steve and Natasha go over the plan. Hydra had infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. That meant no one could be trusted, and if they didn't move fast, they'd all be dead before sunrise. As they pulled up to the Triskelion, Ben felt the Omnitrix pulse against his wrist again. A warning. Something was coming. Then, gunfire erupted. The road ahead exploded in a storm of bullets and flames as a Hydra strike team opened fire. Ben barely had time to react before Steve yanked the wheel, sending the car swerving onto the sidewalk. "Move," Steve barked, kicking the door open. Ben didn't need to be told twice. He slammed the Omnitrix down, and in a burst of green light, he was XLR-8. The world slowed to a crawl. Ben zipped between enemy soldiers, dodging bullets. Before they could even leave the chamber, he slammed one guy into a wall, spun, and knocked another off his feet. Everything was going fine, until he heard the metallic whirring of a cybernetic arm. Ben turned, and there he was. The Winter Soldier. And this time, he was coming for Ben. Bucky lunged, his metal fist a blur. Ben barely dodged. The ground where he had been standing cracked from the impact. Ben backpedaled fast, eyes widening. Okay, first of all, rude. He flipped backwards, slamming the Omnitrix again. Green light flared, and now he was Diamond Head. He formed a crystalline sword, blocking Bucky's next strike. The impact sent tremors through the air, but Bucky didn't flinch. Instead, he twisted, using his metal arm to rip the blade apart. Ben gritted his teeth. "All right, buddy, let's see how you handle this." He raised his arm, firing a barrage of crystal shards. Bucky dodged every single one. Then, before Ben could react, Bucky closed the distance, fast. Ben's eyes barely had time to widen before a metal fist slammed into his stomach. The breath rushed out of him. He went flying back, crashing through a concrete barrier. For a moment, he lay there, dazed, his vision blurred, his ribs screaming in pain. Bucky approached, eyes cold and calculating. "You're in my way," he said, raising his weapon. Ben groaned, forcing himself to his feet. "And you really need a hobby, man." Bucky lunged again. Ben slammed the Omnitrix one more time. This time, he didn't recognize the form he turned into. The moment he transformed, everything changed. The world around him slowed to a standstill. The energy coursing through his body felt different, more powerful, more ancient. Bucky stopped mid-attack, his expression shifting ever so slightly. "That's new," Natasha muttered from behind cover, watching in shock. Ben looked down at himself. His armor was black and silver, the Omnitrix symbol now glowing a deep red. His body felt heavier, more controlled, more refined. And then it hit him. This wasn't just any alien, this was the ultimate Omnitrix. And for the first time in his life, he had no idea what was about to happen next. The Winter Soldier lunged, but Ben was faster. His new form moved on its own, predicting every attack before it came. He ducked, twisted, and drove a fist into Bucky's chest. The assassin went flying. Ben stared at his own hands, breathing hard. He could feel something unlocking inside the Omnitrix, something that had been dormant for years. "Ben," Steve called, running toward him. Ben turned, his heart pounding. "I don't know what's happening," Ben admitted. Steve's eyes flickered to the Omnitrix. "Then we need to find out. Fast." Ben looked back at Bucky, who was already getting back up. He knew one thing for certain. Hydra had been hunting him for a reason, and whatever was inside the Omnitrix, they wanted it. Ben stood at the edge of a rooftop, the cold Washington air biting at his skin as he stared down at the city below. His breathing was unsteady, his hands still trembling from the fight. His body was back to normal now. The Omnitrix had reverted to its usual form, but something was different. Something had changed. He could still feel it. That strange, unstoppable power that had surged through him. It wasn't like when he had first unlocked the Master Control years ago, and it wasn't like when he had discovered Ultimate Aliens. This was something else entirely, and it terrified him. Steve Rogers and Natasha Romanoff stood a few feet away, speaking in hushed tones while Sam Wilson kept watch. The team had barely escaped the Hydra ambush, but Nick Fury was alive, recovering from his injuries in a hidden safe house. The battle was over, for now. But Hydra was still out there, and so was the Winter Soldier. Ben's grip tightened around the Omnitrix as he replayed the fight in his mind. The way Bucky had fought, the precision, the ruthlessness. But more than that, the way he had looked at Ben, like he recognized him. It didn't make sense. They had never met. So why did Ben feel like Bucky Barnes knew something he didn't? His thoughts were interrupted as Steve approached. The captain's face was grim, his blue eyes scanning Ben like he was trying to figure him out. "All right, kid," Steve said. "You ready to tell us what happened back there?" Ben turned to face them fully. "You mean when I turned into something I've never seen before? Or when I beat your brainwashed best friend into the pavement?" Steve's jaw tightened at that, but he didn't argue. Instead, he crossed his arms and waited. Ben sighed. "I don't know what's going on. I don't know what this new form is or where it came from, but..." He hesitated, his fingers brushing over the Omnitrix. "I think Hydra does." That got their attention. Natasha straightened, her sharp eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" Ben exhaled slowly, trying to piece together the thoughts in his head. "They've been after me ever since I got here. At first, I thought they just wanted the Omnitrix for its power, but now..." His gaze darkened. "Now I think they already know what's inside it." Steve frowned. "You think they've studied it before?" Ben shook his head. "Not just studied it. I think they've had it before." A heavy silence filled the air. "That's impossible," Natasha finally said. "Your watch came from another universe, right? How could Hydra know about it?" Ben hesitated, his stomach twisting. "I don't know." But deep down, he had a horrible feeling that he was about to find out. With Fury still recovering, Steve, Ben, and Natasha went after the only lead they had left, a Hydra scientist who had been overseeing the Winter Soldier program, Dr. Arnim Zola. The bunker was hidden deep beneath an old military facility, the air thick with dust and decay. Ben felt the Omnitrix buzz against his wrist, reacting to something within the facility. He didn't like it. "Why does this place feel like a horror movie?" he muttered, as they moved deeper into the base. "Because it probably is," Natasha answered dryly. Eventually they reached a large, rusted control room, filled with ancient computers and blinking green monitors. And then, a voice crackled to life. "Ah, Captain Rogers, Agent Romanoff, and Benjamin Tennyson, at last." Ben's blood ran cold. He turned sharply, his gaze locking onto one of the monitors, as an artificial face flickered onto the screen. The distorted image of Dr. Arnim Zola stared back at him. Steve's eyes narrowed. "You know him." Zola chuckled. "But of course, we have been watching him for quite some time." Ben clenched his fists. "Bullshit! You don't know anything about me." "Oh, but we do, Herr Tennyson," Zola said, his voice disturbingly calm. "Or should I say, Subject X." Ben froze. A sick feeling crept into his stomach. "What did you just call me?" Zola's expression didn't change. "You are special, young one. More special than even you realize. The Omnitrix you wear is not merely a tool, it is a key. a key to something far greater than you can comprehend. Ben's heart pounded. What are you talking about? Zola's face flickered. The Omnitrix is not just a creation of Azimuth. It is older than him, older than the universe itself. And Hydra, we have seen it before. Steve and Natasha exchanged wary glances. Ben's mind was spinning. That's impossible. Zola continued unfazed. There is a reason your device calls you compromised. There is a reason it is changing. Tell me, Herr Tennyson, have you ever wondered why the Omnitrix binds to its user so completely? Ben's breath caught in his throat. Why it does not just grant power, but alters the very essence of those who wear it. His hands trembled. No, that's... The Omnitrix does not simply give you forms, Zola pressed. It rewrites you, alters your DNA, your mind, your very soul, and now it is evolving. Ben staggered back. He could feel his heart beat in his ears, his breath shallow. The Omnitrix was changing him, and he had never even noticed. Steve stepped forward, his voice hard. What do you want with him? Zola's face flickered again. Hydra has long sought the perfect soldier. We experimented for years. With the Winter Soldier, we created a weapon, but with the Omnitrix, we could create a god. Ben's breath hitched. Zola's next words sent a chill down his spine. You are not the first wielder of that device, Herr Tennyson, and you will not be the last. A cold realization settled in Ben's gut. Hydra had tried to control the Omnitrix before, and now they wanted to use him to finish what they started. Before Ben could process everything, the bunker's alarms blared. A deep rumbling shook the facility, and Steve's head snapped toward the entrance. We need to go, now. Ben was still frozen in place. The Omnitrix wasn't just a weapon, it was something more, something ancient, and whatever was happening to him, it wasn't random. Ben! Natasha grabbed his arm, pulling him back to reality. We move now. As they ran toward the exit, Ben stole one last glance at Zola. The AI simply smiled. We will see each other again, Subject X. Then, the bunker exploded. They barely made it out. The bunker collapsed in on itself, taking whatever secrets Zola had left with it. But Ben couldn't stop thinking about his words. He sat on the edge of a safe house bed, staring at the Omnitrix. It glowed faintly, almost as if it were breathing. Steve entered, arms crossed. You okay? Ben didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was hollow. I don't know who I am anymore. Steve sat beside him. You're still you, Ben. Ben's fingers curled around the Omnitrix. Then why, he whispered, does it feel like I'm becoming something else? Outside, the Omnitrix flashed red again. Something was coming, and Ben wasn't sure if he would survive it. Ben sat alone in a dimly lit apartment in Brooklyn, staring at the Omnitrix as it glowed faintly in the darkness. It had been weeks since the battle with Hydra, since Arnim Zola had revealed the terrifying truth about the Omnitrix's origins. Weeks since he had learned that the device wasn't just a tool, it was something more. Something that rewrote him, reshaped him, changed him in ways he still couldn't understand. He hadn't told Steve or Natasha what he had discovered. How could he? How do you tell someone you don't even know if you're still human? He exhaled slowly, gripping his wrist. The Omnitrix pulsed beneath his fingers, as if it was alive, as if it knew what was coming. And Ben did too, because the Avengers were falling apart.
The world had changed since the battle against Ultron. Governments no longer saw them as heroes. They saw them as a threat. And now, the United Nations had passed something called the Sokovia Accords, a law that would put superheroes under government control. Steve Rogers was against it. Tony Stark was for it. And Ben, he had no idea where he stood. Ben had avoided choosing a side for as long as he could. But when he got a call from Tony Stark, he knew that was about to change. The meeting took place in a quiet cafe in Manhattan. No S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, no Avengers, just Tony and Ben, sitting across from each other in a booth. Tony leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "So, tell me, Tennyson, you've been laying low for a while. What's going on in that head of yours?" Ben sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, man. Everything's messed up. First Hydra, then this Accords thing. And now I'm supposed to just pick a side?" Tony tilted his head. "That's kinda how these things work." Ben frowned. "So what?" "I just signed some government document, and suddenly I'm an agent in their back pocket. That doesn't sit right with me." Tony sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Look, I get it. I do. But this isn't about control. It's about accountability. People are scared, Ben. After New York, after Sokovia, after all the destruction we've been a part of, they want to know that someone is keeping us in check." Ben scoffed. "Yeah? And what happens when the people in charge start telling us who the bad guys are? What happens when they make a call we don't agree with?" Tony didn't answer right away. He just looked at Ben, his expression unreadable. Then, finally, he spoke. "If we don't take this deal, we become fugitives," he said. "I know you're young, and I know you think you can just punch your way out of every problem. But trust me, this fight isn't gonna end in a way you like." Ben clenched his jaw. "And what if I don't want to fight at all?" Tony exhaled, looking tired. "Then you're already making a choice, kid." Ben stared at him, his stomach twisting. Because deep down, he knew Tony was right. The choice was made for him sooner than he expected. Ben had been tracking Steve and Bucky, trying to figure out where he stood in all of this, when he saw it. The moment the Accords stopped being a debate and started being a war. The German airport was a battleground. On one side, Iron Man, War Machine, Black Widow, Vision, and a kid in red and blue spandex who moved like a spider. On the other, Steve Rogers, Bucky Barnes, Wanda Maximoff, Clint Barton, Sam Wilson, and Ben, because in the end, Ben chose Steve. Not because he didn't believe in accountability, not because he wanted to be a fugitive, but because he had seen what happened when people like Hydra got their hands on something like the Omnitrix, and he wasn't about to let that happen again. Whoa. Ben blinked as the kid in red and blue landed in front of him, his white eyes widening behind his mask. "You're Ben Tennyson, aren't you?" "Dude, I watched your fight against the Hulk on YouTube." Ben raised an eyebrow. Thanks." "Wait, can I get a selfie with you real quick? This is insane." Ben sighed. "Kid, we're in the middle of a fight." "Oh, right, okay. Sorry in advance." And then Spider-Man kicked him in the chest. Ben stumbled back, gritting his teeth. "All right, that's it." He slammed the Omnitrix. Green light flashed, and suddenly, he was XLR-8. Spider-Man's eyes widened. "Whoa, cool." Then Ben moved. Everything slowed to a crawl as he darted forward, weaving past Spider-Man's attacks with ease. He skidded behind him, aiming a kick at his back, but at the last second, Spidey's reflexes kicked in, and he flipped out of the way. Ben grinned. "Okay, that was kinda cool." Spider-Man shot a web at him. "Dude, right back at you." They clashed again, trading blows across the tarmac as the battle between the Avengers raged around them. By the time it was over, Ben was on the run. Steve had gotten Bucky out of there, but the cost was high. Rhodey had been badly injured. Tony had been betrayed by his friends. The Avengers, they were broken. Ben sat in a small apartment in Wakanda, watching the Omnitrix pulse faintly on his wrist. Steve was in the other room talking quietly with Bucky. T'Challa had offered them sanctuary for the time being, but Ben knew it wouldn't last forever. Sooner or later, they'd have to move again. He leaned back against the couch, his mind racing. The war was over, but something told him this was just the beginning. That night, Ben woke up gasping for breath. His body was burning, his mind consumed by something he didn't understand. He clutched the Omnitrix, watching as its green light pulsed wildly, almost like it was in pain. And then, suddenly, a vision hit him, a towering figure, draped in golden armor, a gauntlet lined with glowing stones. A single snap, Ben jerked upright, his heart hammering. He didn't know what he had just seen, but deep down, he knew something was coming, something terrible. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure if the Omnitrix would be enough to stop it. The Wakandan sunrise was breathtaking. Ben sat on the edge of a rooftop, watching as the golden rays of light stretched over the dense jungle and gleaming vibranium city below. The air was warm, peaceful, but inside, his mind was anything but. He gripped the Omnitrix, turning it over in his palm. It still pulsed faintly, almost like it was reacting to something just beyond his understanding. His dreams had been getting worse. Flashes of fire, destruction, and something enormous lurking in the shadows. He knew what was coming. He could feel it. But before that, his thoughts drifted to something else. Something he had barely spoken about since it happened. Ultron. Nobody had really asked where he had been during the Battle of Sokovia. They had just assumed he had his own fight somewhere else. And they weren't wrong. Ben had tried to be a part of that fight. He had been there at the start, helping Tony and Bruce track down Hydra's last bases. He had fought alongside Steve when they raided Baron Strucker's fortress, watched as Tony took Loki's scepter. And then he had made a choice. He had seen the way Tony and Bruce worked on Ultron. He had seen the hope in their eyes, the belief that they were creating something that would change the world for the better. And for once, Ben had let his guard down. He had believed in it too. And when it all went wrong, when Ultron turned against them, destroyed Jarvis, and declared war on humanity, Ben had blamed himself. He had left the team after that, disappearing for weeks. He had helped the Plumbers track down an alien weapons smuggler on the other side of the world, trying to distract himself from what happened, trying to forget. But now, as he sat on that rooftop watching another war creep closer, he wondered if running had ever really changed anything. A voice pulled him from his thoughts. "You're quiet," Steve said, stepping up beside him. Ben smirked slightly. "Didn't know you cared, Cap." Steve gave him a look. "I care when you disappear into your own head. What's going on?" Ben hesitated, then finally he sighed. "You ever make a mistake so bad," he muttered, "that you wonder if maybe you should have never been here at all?" Steve was silent for a long moment. Then he sat down next to him. "Yeah," he said. "More than once." Ben swallowed. "How do you deal with it?" Steve exhaled. "You don't. Not really. But you do what you can to make it right." Ben looked down at the Omnitrix, its glow barely flickering. "Yeah," he murmured. "That's the problem, Cap. I don't think I can." And as much as he wanted to pretend otherwise, he wasn't sure if he wanted to find out. It happened faster than any of them expected. One minute, Ben was sitting in a Wakandan council meeting with T'Challa and Steve discussing where to go next. The next, Bruce Banner crashed through the ceiling. The impact shook the entire building, dust and debris flying everywhere as the unconscious scientist groaned, clutching his ribs. Ben and Steve rushed to his side, eyes wide as Bruce's lips moved. Barely able to form words, Ben's stomach twisted as he leaned in to hear. "He's coming," Bruce whispered, his voice hoarse. His eyes wide with horror locked onto Ben's. "Ben, Thanos is coming." The entire room fell into stunned silence, and then the sky split open. Ben turned, his heart pounding as he rushed outside. The clouds above Wakanda twisted violently, swirling into a vortex of darkness. And then from the depths of the heavens, a massive alien warship descended. Ben's breath hitched. The Black Order had arrived, and they weren't alone. Chaos erupted instantly. Ben slammed the Omnitrix without hesitation. Green light flashed and Humongosaur emerged, his massive form charging forward as Wakandan warriors clashed with Thanos' army. He swung his tail, sending a group of alien soldiers flying, then grabbed one of the massive Outriders and hurled it into a group of approaching enemies. Steve fought beside him, his shield slicing through enemies like a blur, while T'Challa led the Wakandan forces into battle. Then Ben saw her. Proxima Midnight. The alien warrior queen locked eyes with him from across the battlefield, her spear dripping with energy. She grinned. "You are the one Thanos seeks," she said. Ben's blood ran cold. "What the hell does that mean?" he snapped. Proxima didn't answer. Instead, she lunged. Ben barely dodged the first strike, his body twisting as the spear sliced through the air, where his head had been a second ago. He slammed his fist forward, but Proxima sidestepped effortlessly, grabbing his wrist and twisting it painfully. Ben gritted his teeth, slamming the Omnitrix again. In a flash, he transformed. Way Big now towered over the battlefield. Proxima took a step back, eyeing him. "Interesting," Ben growled. "Let's see how interesting you think it is when I stomp you into the dirt." He swung, but Proxima moved like a blur, dodging each of his attacks with terrifying ease. Then, before he could react, something else happened. The Omnitrix flickered, and then it deactivated. Ben shrank back into himself, collapsing onto his knees. His vision swam. His entire body felt like it was on fire. And then, as he looked up, he saw him, a shadow looming over the battlefield. Thanos. Ben barely had time to process what was happening. He felt the power radiating from Thanos. It was unlike anything he had ever felt before. Worse than Vilgax, worse than Agrigor, worse than anything he had ever faced. The Mad Titan looked down at him, eyes curious. "So," Thanos murmured, "this is the child who wears the Omnitrix." Ben gritted his teeth, trying to force himself to stand. "Yeah. And who the hell are you?" Thanos smirked. "I am inevitable." Ben barely saw it happen. A single motion, a snap, then pain. His body felt like it was dissolving. He looked down, eyes widening as he saw his fingers turning to dust. No. He turned to Steve, his voice barely a whisper. "Cap." Steve turned just in time to see Ben disappear. And then everything went black. There was no pain, no light, no sound. For a long time there was nothing. Ben wasn't sure if he was dead. At first, he thought he had just blacked out, that Thanos had knocked him unconscious, that he would wake up any second back in Wakanda, ready to fight. But the more time passed, the more he realized something was very, very wrong. Because he wasn't anywhere, he wasn't floating, he wasn't falling, he was just gone. "Hello?" His own voice echoed around him, but there was no response. He took a step forward, Or at least, he thought he did. He wasn't sure if he even had a body anymore. Then, a light appeared in the distance. At first, it was just a flicker, but then it grew brighter, warmer, pulsing like a heartbeat. Ben reached out instinctively, drawn toward it. And then, he saw something. A figure standing in the void waiting for him. Ben's breath caught. His heart pounded. It was Grandpa Max. Ben's legs nearly gave out. He took a step closer, blinking rapidly, trying to process what he was seeing. Grandpa? His voice cracked, barely above a whisper. Max smiled warmly, his arms crossed. Hey, kiddo. Ben's hands shook. He wanted to believe this was real, but how could it be? You can't be here, Ben whispered. His voice broke at the end. Max just chuckled. Neither can you. The words hit like a punch to the gut. Ben swallowed hard. So, I'm dead? Max shook his head. No, not exactly. You're in between. The snap didn't just erase you, Ben. It pulled you into something beyond time, beyond space, and I think you already know why. Ben looked down at his wrist. The Omnitrix was still there, still glowing. Of course, it had saved him. It always did. Max's expression softened. Ben, listen to me. You don't have much time. The universe still needs you. Ben clenched his fists. What can I do? I don't even know where I am. Max stepped forward, placing a hand on Ben's shoulder. You'll find a way back, kiddo. You always do. But when you do, you have to be ready. Ready for what? Ben asked, his voice shaking. Max's expression darkened. For the fight of your life. The light around them flared. Then, everything went white. A sharp, painful gasp tore from Ben's lungs as he fell forward onto solid ground. His entire body felt like it was on fire. Every nerve tingling like static electricity was coursing through him. He sucked in a breath, real air. He was back. Slowly, he pushed himself up, blinking rapidly. He wasn't in Wakanda anymore. He was outside a ruined compound. Then he heard voices, and he saw them. Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff, Bruce Banner, all standing there staring at him in disbelief. Ben's voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. What the hell just happened? After the initial shock wore off, Ben sat with the remaining Avengers, listening as they explained everything. 5 years had passed. 5 years. The world had moved on. Half of the universe had been wiped from existence, including most of the Avengers. Tony had retired. Steve had lost hope. But now, with Scott Lang back and the idea of time travel on the table, they had a chance to bring everyone back, a chance to stop Thanos once and for all. Ben didn't hesitate. All right, let's do it. And just like that, the fight for the universe began. The moment the portals opened, Ben felt a surge of adrenaline. He stood beside Steve, watching in awe as the dusted heroes returned. T'Challa, Doctor Strange, the Guardians, everyone. Ben grinned. Oh yeah, now we're talking. Then the battle erupted. Ben slammed the Omnitrix, transforming into Way Big. His massive form loomed over the battlefield, crushing Thanos' war machines with each step. Thanos saw him, and for the first time, Ben saw fear in the Mad Titan's eyes. You should have stayed erased, boy, Thanos growled, tightening his grip on his double-bladed sword. Ben cracked his knuckles. And you should have stayed the hell out of my universe. Then, they clashed. Ben swung, but Thanos was fast, ducking under the massive blow and slicing into Ben's leg. The pain was immediate, but Ben didn't fall. Instead, he roared, grabbing Thanos in one giant hand and hurling him across the battlefield. Thanos crashed, but immediately rolled to his feet. He raised the Infinity Blade, only to be blindsided by a repulsor blast from Iron Man. Ben reverted back to human form, landing beside Tony. "You okay, kid?" Tony asked, panting. Ben wiped blood from his lip. "I'm fine. Let's end this." The battle was pure chaos. Ben fought with everything he had, cycling through Alien X, XLR-8, and Humongosaur, trying to keep Thanos' forces at bay. Then, Thanos got the gauntlet. Ben saw the desperation in Tony's eyes. He saw Steve beaten and bloodied. He saw everything falling apart, and he knew what he had to do. As Tony lunged for the stones, Ben did something reckless. He grabbed the Omnitrix and turned the dial. And this time, he didn't choose an alien. He chose the gauntlet. The Omnitrix glowed with pure cosmic energy, shifting and reshaping. Ben felt his body scream in protest, his DNA rewriting itself at a molecular level. And then, the Omnitrix transformed into an exact replica of the Infinity Gauntlet. Ben's eyes widened. Holy sh... The power rushed through him. He could feel everything, every atom in the universe, every soul screaming in agony. Tony looked at him. Ben looked back. And together, they snapped. Ben collapsed, his body barely holding together. Tony was dying. Ben crawled toward him, his breathing ragged. Hey, stay with me, man." Tony coughed, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. He looked at Ben and smiled. "You did good, kid," Tony whispered. Ben's vision blurred with tears. No, we can fix this." But Tony just shook his head, and then he was gone. Ben sat there silent, and for the first time in his life, the Omnitrix felt heavier than ever. The battlefield was silent. Smoke curled into the sky. The ruins of the Avengers compound, a shattered graveyard of metal and stone. Bodies of Thanos' army littered the ground, slowly turning to dust, as the last remnants of their master's will faded into nothing. Ben Tennyson knelt in the rubble, his hands trembling as he stared at the Omnitrix on his wrist. The power of the gauntlet was gone, the overwhelming energy that had surged through him now just a whisper in the back of his mind. But the damage was done. Tony Stark was dead, and no amount of alien transformations or cosmic-level power could change that. Steve Rogers stood nearby, staring at Tony's lifeless body with an expression of deep, quiet grief. The others gathered around, Peter Parker sobbing uncontrollably, Pepper Potts whispering her final goodbye. Ben felt like he was in a dream, like none of this was real. But then, the weight of the Omnitrix on his wrist felt heavier than ever, and he knew, this is real, and I failed to save him. A voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Ben," came Steve's voice, quiet and steady. Ben swallowed the lump in his throat and forced himself to look up. Steve's expression was unreadable. "You okay?" Ben almost laughed. Almost. Instead, he exhaled sharply and shook his head. "No, Cap, I'm really not." Steve just nodded, understanding. Because truth be told, neither was he. The next few days were a blur. The world mourned its heroes. Tony Stark's funeral was held at his lakeside cabin, a quiet, solemn affair. Ben stood at the back, away from the others, arms crossed as he tried to process everything that had happened. Then, there was the matter of the Infinity Stones. They had won, but the cost was steep, and now the stones had to be returned to their rightful places in time, exactly when and where they were taken. Steve Rogers volunteered. Ben didn't hesitate to volunteer to go with him. Standing outside the Avengers compound, Ben stared at the quantum platform, hands in his pockets. Steve adjusted his time travel gear, glancing over at him. "You sure about this, kid?" Ben scoffed. "Please, You think I'm gonna let you time travel across the multiverse without backup? Steve gave him a small smile. Fair enough. Bruce adjusted the controls. All right, you two. This should take you to the exact points where the stones were taken. Once you put them back, you come right back here. All right. Ben nodded, giving a thumbs up. Easy enough. Bruce hesitated. Ben, you sure the Omnitrix is stable after what happened? Ben looked down at the watch on his wrist. It looked the same, but it felt different, like something deep inside it had shifted permanently. He wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not, but he wasn't about to let it stop him. It'll be fine, Ben muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Steve took a deep breath. All right then. Ben smirked. Let's go fix time. Bruce pulled the lever and the world disappeared in a flash of white. Ben and Steve's journey through time was going fine, until it wasn't. They had returned the Mind Stone to the 2012 timeline, put the Power Stone back on Morag, and even managed to sneak the Reality Stone back into Jane Foster without getting caught. But then they had to return the Space Stone, the Tesseract. Ben knew it was going to be tricky. The last time they were in 2012, they had lost the Tesseract to Loki, causing him to escape with it. Now, they had to fix that. Ben and Steve arrived in the S.H.I.E.L.D. facility where the Tesseract was originally stored in the 70s. They moved through the halls unnoticed, Steve disguised as a soldier while Ben used Ghostfreak's intangibility to phase through security checkpoints. They reached the vault where the Tesseract was stored. Ben exhaled. All right, easy in, easy out. Steve shot him a look. You just jinxed us. Ben grinned. Yeah, probably. Steve cracked the vault open and there it was, the Tesseract. Ben reached for it, fingers brushing against the cold blue glow of the cube, and then the Omnitrix reacted. A sharp, piercing whine erupted from the device. The green glow turned white, then red, then something else entirely, something unnatural. Ben staggered back, clutching his wrist. What the hell? Steve's head snapped toward him. Ben felt his mind shift. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist around him. And then he saw something. A vision. Flashes of a desert planet. A throne made of metal. A being with glowing scars running down his face. And a voice. Deep. Hollow. Unfathomably powerful. You were never supposed to be here, child. Ben gasped as the vision vanished. Steve grabbed his shoulders. Ben, what just happened? Ben's breathing was ragged. His eyes were wide with horror, because he knew something or someone is watching me. And that wasn't good. When they returned to the present, Ben was shaking. Steve had stayed behind in the past, choosing to live his life with Peggy Carter. Ben had expected that, but he couldn't stop thinking about what had happened with the Omnitrix. Something was wrong. And when he looked up, standing at the entrance of the Avengers compound, Doctor Strange was already waiting for him. Ben's stomach dropped. You felt it too, didn't you? Ben asked. Strange's expression was unreadable. Yes. Ben sighed, rubbing his temples. Great. That's never a good sign. Strange stepped forward, lowering his voice. Ben, whatever you saw, whatever you felt, it wasn't just a random event. The Omnitrix is connected to something far greater than any of us realized. Ben looked at him. What are you saying? Strange met his gaze. I'm saying we need to talk about the multiverse. Ben's breath hitched, and deep down, he knew. This was only the beginning. Ben sat across from Doctor Strange in the dimly lit Sanctum Sanctorum, a cup of untouched tea steaming between them. He wasn't interested in drinking it. His mind was racing. Ever since the moment he touched the Tesseract in the 70s, something inside him had changed. Visions, nightmares, echoes of things that shouldn't exist, and now, Strange was telling him why. The Omnitrix is a universal anomaly, Strange said, his voice calm but serious. It doesn't belong in this universe, Ben, and it never did. Ben frowned. Yeah, well, no offense, Doc, but I kinda figured that out a while ago. Strange shook his head. You don't understand. The Omnitrix wasn't just brought here by accident. It was pulled here. Ben's heart skipped a beat. By what? Strange hesitated, then waved his hand. A swirling portal of golden light formed between them, revealing a barren wasteland of metal and ruins. Ben's stomach twisted, because in the distance, sitting upon a throne of broken timelines, was a figure, a man, draped in black and gold armor, his face etched with glowing scars that pulsed with raw energy. Strange's voice was grim. Kang the Conqueror. Ben's breath caught in his throat. You're saying? He swallowed. He's been watching me this whole time. Strange nodded. Yes. And now that the Omnitrix has disrupted time itself, he's coming for you. Ben exhaled sharply, gripping the Omnitrix tightly. Then let's go meet him. The attack came faster than expected. One moment, Ben and Strange were preparing a plan. The next, the sky above New York split open. A massive circular portal tore through the fabric of space-time, swallowing entire buildings in its wake. The air vibrated with an unnatural hum, and through the rift, a fleet of warships emerged, Kang's army. Ben jumped to his feet. Aw, hell. Strange's cloak tightened around his shoulders. We're out of time. The first blast struck the sanctum, sending stone and debris flying. Ben dove out of the way, slamming the Omnitrix midair. It's hero time. In a flash of green light, he transformed into Atomics. The sheer radiation from his form burned the ground beneath him, and he soared into the sky, blasting energy at the invading warships. But then, he felt it. A pulse. A shift. His entire body glitched. For a split second, he wasn't in New York anymore. He was somewhere else. Somewhere wrong. A battlefield of broken timelines. He saw variants of himself fighting and falling, their Omnitrixes sparking violently. And then, he was back. Ben staggered midair, gasping. Strange's voice echoed in his head. The Omnitrix doesn't belong here. He clenched his fist. Screw that! Then he dived back into battle. The fight led them to the ruins of the Avengers compound. Ben landed hard, his breath ragged. Across from him, Kang stepped through a shimmering portal, his expression unreadable. So, Kang mused, this is the boy who defied time. Ben wiped blood from his lip. Yeah, well, I don't like being watched, you time-traveling creep. Kang smirked. The Omnitrix was never meant for you. It belongs to the one who commands the flow of time. Ben's eyes darkened. Over my dead body. Kang's hand glowed with temporal energy. That was always the plan. And then they clashed. Ben slammed the Omnitrix, transforming into Alien X. Cosmic energy pulsed through him, bending reality itself as he launched forward. Kang matched him step for step, warping the battlefield around them. Every punch, every blast sent shockwaves through time itself. Buildings flickered between past and future, the entire world breaking apart. Ben gritted his teeth. I'm not letting you win. Kang's eyes glowed with raw power. You never had a choice. Then he struck. A single blast hit Ben's Omnitrix directly. And suddenly, Ben felt himself unravel. His body flickered, stretched, pulled in 1,000 directions at once. His mind was breaking. The Omnitrix was failing. And in that moment, Ben realized the truth. Kang wasn't just trying to kill him. He was trying to erase him. Ben collapsed to his knees, the Omnitrix sparking violently. He could feel himself fading. He wasn't just dying, he was being erased from existence. Kang towered over him. Goodbye, Tennyson. Ben panted, barely able to move. But then, he saw them. Flashes of his past. Gwen, Kevin, Grandpa Max, the Avengers, Tony, Steve. All the people he had fought for. All the people he had saved. And he knew. I can't let it end like this. Ben forced himself up, his fingers brushing against the Omnitrix. Kang's eyes narrowed. Futile. Ben smirked weakly. Maybe. Then, he slammed the Omnitrix one last time. The green glow exploded outward, consuming everything. And then, Ben Tennyson was gone. Doctor Strange stood alone in the ruins, his cloak fluttering in the wind. The battle was over. Kang was gone. His army had vanished. But so had Ben. Strange exhaled slowly, looking down at the Omnitrix, now just a broken, lifeless device, lying in the dust. A voice spoke behind him. Is he really gone? Strange turned. Peter Parker stood there, his mask in his hands, eyes filled with grief. Strange was quiet for a moment. Then, finally, he nodded. He saved us all, Strange murmured. Peter swallowed hard, his hands trembling. But he was just a kid. Strange looked up at the sky. He was a hero. Peter bent down, picking up the broken Omnitrix. It was over. Ben Tennyson was gone. And yet, somewhere in the vast infinite multiverse, a faint green light flickered. Somewhere in the multiverse, a young boy sat in his bedroom, staring at a strange device that had fallen from the sky. A green watch pulsing with energy. He hesitated, then, slowly, he reached for it. The Omnitrix clicked, and the cycle began again.
And that is going to be it for What If Ben 10 was in the MCU timeline. What did you guys think of this Marvel mashup video with Ben 10? What did you think you liked about this particular episode, or what else did you maybe not like about this particular episode? Let me know in the comments down below. And again, I would highly anticipate you guys to check out the Patreon or even becoming a YouTube member. The support really just goes a long way. And also, I do want to give a massive shout out to the YouTube channel. We have a brand new YouTube channel called Miss the Part Shorts, where we're posting a lot of short form content, and I'm just going on camera, just kind of giving you guys short form, like food for thought type of content. So if that's something that you guys like seeing on the channel or within the realm of Miss the Part, I would highly recommend to subscribe, as it's just free extra content. And who knows, maybe one of your ideas in the comment section might be displayed within one of those videos. So again, and that being said, would you guys like to see more Ben 10 crossovers or even more Ben 10 what ifs? Let me know in the comments down below. Do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn those notifications on so you and your friends are all up to date with the latest content. Thank you guys so much for tuning in into today's video, and I will see you in the next episode. Take care and have a wonderful day. Peace out.